Welcome into the Toyota Lounge for the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, presented by your Front Range Toyota dealerships. We got Rudo, we got Megan, we got Eric coming to you live. It's officially August, so we are about as deep into the off season as you can get when it comes to hockey. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. How do we prevent this? How do we get an NHL that gets talked about year-round the way things like football do? Really, it's mostly just football, basketball to a lesser extent, but certainly two sports that are more popular every single day, even in the middle of the offseason, than something like hockey is. I wanted to get into that conversation, and this is something we've talked about on the pod before. I think certainly if you look at where the NHL is today compared to where they were 2 or 3 years ago, you probably feel pretty good about them taking steps in the right direction. You look at this last year's Stanley Cup, it was, I think, the second most viewed Stanley Cup in the last 20 years or something like that. So there are a bunch of good things to talk about here too, but where do you guys rank the NHL right now as far as their ability to grow the game over the last season? Good, bad, great, ugly, somewhere in between?
I want to shout out the NHL and kick off the show with some growth facts. ESPN saw a 49% increase in viewership compared to the previous season in this 2023-24 season, and TNT's viewership rose 31% during the same period. There was a weird drop in the 2022-23 season. The Avs Cup year was a significantly high viewership year. I don't know if the answer to all of the NHL's viewership problems lies within the Colorado Avalanche. That's a conspiracy theory I'm willing to promote. But the growth after what was sort of a down year the year before last into this, I think, has something to do with the expansion in broadcast and TV. I think that has helped them to see an increase. It's still among major sports in the U.S. not doing as well as I think that it could be doing.
Agree.
But the growth of hockey in the United States is trending in the right direction on the whole, too. There was a notable rise of 17,000 players from the 21-22 season, and then into the 2022-23 season, it's just continued to grow alongside the growth of the NHL.
Yep.
And there are different reasons that we can break down throughout the course of the podcast to support why this has happened, but women's hockey has also seen a 4% increase season by season, and I think with a successful PWHL season under their belt now, it's only going to increase from that point into next year. And I think this trend trickles down into youth sports too, just with that USA Hockey number.
Agreed.
Seeing more and more players able to access the sport, and I think that it's trending in the right direction. They're doing some things well, and I just didn't want to dunk on them completely because there are things that other sports are doing better than they are.
Sure.
But there are initiatives that they've adopted to support some of this growth that have seen successful results, and I don't want to abandon that part of the conversation too. Those are the things that the NHL should be leaning into moving forward.
100%. E, where do you stand on it?
You guys know that I'm going to be the opposite a little bit because of my age, because of what I've seen. We're going to get into it, obviously, in the next hour. But my view on it is it's grown tremendously. It has. I mean, numbers support it. I'm talking about my argument. It's a fact. There's more USA Hockey memberships than 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 30 years ago. And I got my ideas on that, on why is that. Now, as far as where can it go, we'll talk about it. I'll give you my opinion in there somewhere, about where do I think they can achieve and do I think they can surpass the other 3-4 sports, or is it going to always be at the bottom of the, call it the big 4 sports.
I mean, just being realistic, at least in the U.S., it's never going to surpass football. That's just the reality of the situation. Certainly, in the immediate, the NBA is way too ahead of where hockey is. MLB, who knows? I feel like that league is struggling maybe the most, even if they are bigger than the NHL right now. When it comes to the NHL, though, and Megan mentioned some of the stats, look, is it perfect? No, but certainly their TV deals seem to be moving things in the right direction. When you look at the accessories, I don't want to call them accessories because it's not like they don't matter. Obviously, the Women's League is very important. Obviously, junior leagues, things like the USNTDP are very important pieces to this puzzle. I think you are seeing growth, but I think you're also seeing a league that is still learning how to connect with its audience. So as much as they deserve credit for doing what they've done, I think there's still a long way to go when it comes to not just the NHL, but hockey in general. Certainly in the U.S., I know Canada is fanatical about their hockey top to bottom, so I don't know how much room for growth there is in Canada. But in the U.S., it feels like an organization that still has a lot it can improve on. And my question is, are they willing to? When you look at the NHL GMs and the owners and all the meetings that they have, you look at how long Gary Bettman has been at the head of the NHL. Do you think, as is current, the owners and Bettman and Bill Daly can the NHL make the right adjustments to really set the NHL into growing at a higher rate than they already are?
There's a stubbornness that ownership needs to shake a little bit.
Yep.
But there's also, you see where they're willing to try new things, like this Prime Video docuseries that's working alongside the NHL to give this behind-the-scenes look at players' lives is exactly the kind of thing that the sports needs. And that's what I think other sports do well. Like in looking at the NBA, even talking about how the individual personalities of the NBA shine more brightly, a lot of that comes down to the individual player and their expression and a lot of social media use. Like a lot of NBA players are really active on social media.
Very true.
And that's just not necessarily true of hockey. And so that's something that players can elect to do and isn't necessarily going to be on Gary Bettman.
Yep.
Where Gary Bettman steps in, though, is needing to shed some of the stubbornness, like alongside the outdoor games, for example. The outdoor games are successful specifically with the Winter Classic. It's been some of the most highly viewed games, and fans have almost become fanatical around it, coming to expect it each year. But trying to expand outside of that, like leaning into too much of a good thing with the Stadium Series, it just became too much of a good thing and kind of diluted what was already a good NHL product. And so I think what they need to do is evaluate what they do well and not just try to replicate it, instead try to come up with new ideas. And so things like the Prime Video docuseries, I think, is more beneficial to the growth of the league than just creating more outdoor games, because it starts to water down, I think, the specialness of those events. And they're still special, and the league shouldn't abandon them altogether. And that's where he needs to abandon some of the stubbornness when it comes to streaming, too. And that also comes down to the individual teams. But if there's pressure coming from the top, that is going to incentivize teams to not just consider that, but almost make it a necessity for each team. Because we're looking at the way viewers watch their programs nowadays, and a lot of it is turning to live streaming. And that is something that I think the league could apply a little bit more pressure to teams to embrace more fully, because it's going to put hockey in more homes than it is presently. And that's where I think Gary Bettman could also shed some stubbornness.
Eric, I'm curious your thoughts on the outdoor games. I notoriously hate them. I think all sports should be played indoors at all times. Even other crazy sports like golf. It should be people versus people, not people versus the elements. But I know I'm in the minority there. As someone who has been around hockey for as long as you have, how do you feel about them?
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I've always thought they were awesome. I've never been part player or management ever of any outdoor game. And that kind of irks me a little bit. You know, I mean, I would have been, I think they do a good job to promote it. They do a good job to make a big spectacle of it. It is costly. Yes, you'll reap the revenues and stuff like that, but it's a big production to do that. It's a big production to, and you got to remember, it's also a lot of times a home site game, but it's also not your home rink, and there's a little bit of a disadvantage. You know what I mean? Like it is. You know what I mean? You play 41 games at home, 41 on the road. It's a balanced schedule. Now you're taking a game where it's not your own confinement of Ball Arena or whatever it is, or TD Garden in Boston, or whatever it is, right? So, do I agree? Like what Megan just said right there, like all of a sudden it becomes too much. I think it's becoming too much. It's just been diluted a little bit. It's a nice revenue for the league, for the players. But like I said, it takes a lot of freaking resources to get those things going. And then as cool as it is for the teams, it is also a distraction. And, it is. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. In a good way, a distraction. It's the families, it's the kids, it's everybody's involved. And, it's almost like Christmas, you know what I mean? Like a Christmas party, because a lot of times it's right there, right at the New Year's and stuff like that. So it's like a holiday party. Now, I mean, do I think that they should abolish it? Do I think they should do more? No, I think that they've done way enough now. I mean, it's like I said, it's almost too much. You know what I mean? And because it has been successful, I think you're going to see a little bit less of it. I don't think you're going to see as many as there's been. That's just my feeling. Now, do I think that the NHL has done a good job with hiring in the last 15, 20 years, marketing people and big time jobs, you know what I mean, where you didn't see those jobs, available 25, 30 years ago. So they've done a good job. They've come a long way. They do. And for the record, I don't care what people say about Gary Bettmen, like whether you like him or not, he's done a good job since he got in there in 1993. He has been a good freaking commissioner for the owners. And yes, it has been a little bit, I was a player rep for years, so I can tell you, yeah, it has been adversarial towards, players versus league. And I just saw a comment on chat about that. And yeah, it has been that way, but it's not as bad as people think. But I think that you're always going to see that because it's a partnership. And then whenever there's a partnership, there's always give and take. And I think that the PA has done a good job, the last few years, try to understand that. And I think Gary and his Bettmen in his, tenure, has learned to give and take as well. You know what I mean? I think we tend to look at the bad side, but I think the tenure has been amazing. And I've seen it all because again, young boy growing up in a smaller league, and now, obviously working in a big league. 32 teams, a big league compared to what this league used to be. And I think they've done a good job. Can they be better at it? Yes. I think the outdoor game, to answer your question, was an awesome marketing idea that came to fruition, and that's made a lot of money for the league and the players. And I think they should keep doing it. Do I think they should expand more to it? No, because it's first of all, they wouldn't be able to. The infrastructure, everything that you need to put this into place. I think they've stretched themselves out as much as they can right now, and that's my take on the outdoor games.
It's interesting to me because I really love the way that Megan put it, calling these an event, because that's what they are. These are events that, when you have one in your city, super awesome experience. You get to go, you get to be part of this whole thing, and it's an awesome time. It's almost a celebration of hockey in that city, in this event. But when you look at the actual quality of the product, unless you're there, television angles, not that great. Quality of the outdoor games, not very good. They run into significant issues if there's any type of weather at all, whether it be too warm, like we saw with the Avalanche a couple of years in Lake Tahoe, or if there's too much wind and it's snowy and they have to shovel the ice every 5 minutes. I understand that they should exist and that they are great on a local level. I also think there's a lot of logistical problems that you guys have both mentioned of Yeah, look, a Winter Classic every year, awesome. 5, 6, 7 outdoor games every year, too much. Understand the situation there a little bit. And this kind of brings me into my next topic. But before we do jump into that, this show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Make sure you become your own soulmate, even whether you're looking for one or not. BetterHelp even, I can speak for sure today, just wants you to make sure you're taking care of yourself when it comes to your mental health. And they're super easy to use. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you can give BetterHelp a try today. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you don't end up liking that situation, you can switch your therapist at any time for no additional charge. It's super easy. Like I said, you can jump on, you can get in usually like within a week, so it's super fast as well. It's just a great way to try out some therapy and get yourself on the right path. As I mentioned, you can go to betterhelp.com/DNVR today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DNVR to get signed up today. And once you're signed up with them, yeah, sometimes you got to take care of yourself. Sometimes you got to have a little bit of fun, too. You can do that with Circa Sportsbook. You can jump on there and get your bets in at circasports.com to download the app today. Circa just wants to give you the best lines and odds out there. A lot of people have maybe not the best lines. They'll give you boosts and stuff, but Circa doesn't want to go that roundabout way. They just want to straight up give you the best odds, one for one, when it comes to making their bets. So go get with Circa today and get in on some of those splits. A lot of sports books use the -115 or -120 splits when it comes to pick'ems. Circa will get them down to about -110. So it's just better odds that way. Of course, they don't limit players based on winnings, and they encourage bettors to download and explore the sports betting apps available. You'll see that Circa's is the best. Make sure you download that Circa Sports app today at circasports.com. Circa Sports bets can only be made while physically located in the state of Colorado. Must be 21 or older. All rights reserved. Circa Sports Colorado encourages you to gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER or visit problemgamblingcolorado.org. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Here is one of my biggest problems with the NHL currently. A lot of the NHL's revenue is a gate-driven league, and there are certain limitations when it comes to cost that the NHL will always have that other sports don't. The gear and equipment required is just more than many other sports. That's something that you can't really change about the NHL. But when you look at a gate-driven league like the NHL, I worry about ticket prices at a certain point. Because right now, I can go get into a Rockies game for $5. Rockies suck. I get it. Maybe not the hottest ticket in town. But then you look at an Avalanche game at any given time, and yeah, if you're against a weak opponent, maybe you can find the cheap seats for $20, $25, something like that. But if you want quality seats, you're talking hundreds of dollars. And, forget, you could go to Toronto, and it's basically impossible to sit in the lower bowl. Does the NHL limit itself? Is it harder for new fans to get into the NHL because it's so expensive to go watch NHL games?
Well, there's no doubt. You're right. I mean, it is so expensive. It's an expensive night. I mean, I got 3 kids. Trust me. If you're saying you're going to an NHL game, it will set you back, like you said, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I mean, from parking to getting food at the arena, which is outrageous. Any arena, I mean, it's crazy. Or you're going out to eat right before, or like you said, get some seats. And even if they're the cheap seats, there's 5 of you. It's it's a big night. It's a big night now. Where Major League Baseball, for example, can be a little different and have, I went to the Yankee game the other day. It cost me $18 to get in. I mean, honestly, and it's like, whatever. And I'm thinking, I can't do that after an Avs game. You know what I mean? I just can't.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Yep. Baseball, again, that's where one of my arguments is the TV deals, the TV contracts. No, the NHL's TV contract has done wonders from when I was a young kid to when I was a player to when I work with teams to what it is now. It doesn't come close. It doesn't come close to Major League Baseball. It doesn't come close to NFL. It doesn't come close to the NBA. And there's the big difference. And therefore, your tickets have to be it's your main revenue source is your season tickets. It's your gate night in and night out. That's what uh, you're depending on, and that's why teams that don't do well at the gate struggle. You know what I mean? Because the corporate dollar is only so much. Of course, like you said, Toronto and New York, it's a little crazy. It's a little big disparity compared to, I don't know, Columbus or Winnipeg that we've been talking about, right? Because of what they're struggling with and the reason of the departure of the Nordiques, which is strictly corporate dollar, suites, and all that kind of stuff. So hockey has to be expensive because somehow it has to make money in order to support the salaries that are going up, and which is good for players. Trust me, I'm pro player. I'm an ex-player. I'm pro player. But when it comes down to that, and again, now it's a revenue sharing with the owners and everything, so everybody benefits. But it's an expensive night. It really freaking is, and I don't see it changing. I don't see it becoming. That's why I say in the top four or whatever. It's always going to be the fourth one or give and take. Some will argue that they're not even fourth, because of NASCAR and things like that, right? But I'm talking about those major league sports, NHL and NFL, Major League Baseball and NBA. I mean, somebody just said that on chat and that was one of my arguments. I'm from Canada. It's a different culture. Again, good or bad. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying Russia or Finland or Sweden is better than the U.S. I'm saying back where I'm from, when you're born, you will play hockey. That's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. You were born, and our little pictures, whether you're a hockey family or not, or you're holding a little stick, you're holding a mini stick, and as soon as you get to the age of 5 or whatever, you're on skates and you're joining those leagues. Now, in the States, and I love the States, I am now an American, and as you guys know, my 3 kids are Americans. It's totally different, right? When you're born with a football, or you're born with a baseball glove or a baseball bat. That's just reality. That's just the way it is. Now, hockey is what I like to say all the time to people, compared to where I'm from. Like I said, it's a regional sport. So hockey is popular in Colorado because the Avalanche are there. Hockey is popular in Dallas because the Dallas Stars are there. Hockey is popular, in California now because of all the teams that are there. But it's a regional sport. It brings the popularity because the NHL team brings that. With that said, go back to before the Avalanche came back to Denver. I mean, I'm sure the TV ratings on a national broadcast were very freaking low in Denver, Colorado, because it's a regional sport. You know what I mean? So right now, your numbers are really low in, let's say, Alabama or, places like that where there are no NHL teams. And that goes with my point. It's a regional sport. So it's popular in the cities that it's played in, but it's not one of those sports that you're born with. And one of the reasons is, first of all, A, is climate. B, is rinks. I'm sitting at a rink right now. Like, it's hard to operate a rink. They're expensive to run. It's expensive to rent ice. The cost of equipment is absolutely ridiculous. Trust me, I got 3 kids. Well, thank God I got 2 in hockey. My daughter doesn't play. I mean, I would have, if she wanted to, she would have. But I'm saying, cost-wise, it's nice I only have 2, But what I'm saying is it's so freaking expensive. Now, if you're playing baseball or football, I mean, I'm not saying that those sports aren't, costing people money, but it's not as expensive a freaking full set of hockey gear. And I know somebody said again on chat, because I'm reading chat, and they're saying, the people like subsidize it with the Avalanche or whatever it is, an NHL team, and it's only 100. I know it's that. It's when you're learning to play. And then all of a sudden you're 6 or 7, you're out of learn to play. And then you get into the real freaking expenses because those programs aren't there anymore. Now you're really paying out of pocket, and it's expensive. You can rent ice in the United States anywhere from $300, $400, $500 an hour to get an hour of ice time. And that's outrageous, where you can go to a park and it's just grass and it's free. Like I said, you want to go play football, there's some padding involved, or basketball, you need a ball, you need a baseball, you need a glove and a ball. Like this, you need an ice rink, you need a freaking some gear. It's a very costly game, and that's why it's not every family that can afford that. And that's why it's always going to limit it to the number of people that can play that sport. It's a fact. It's a costly sport, and there's only so many rinks. And yeah, in some places there's more rinks than others. And yes, for example, in Denver, when I got there in '96, there was only a few rinks, and now there's a boatload of rinks, which is nice, but it's nowhere near where I'm from, where it's one every corner. Every 2 miles there's a rink. And that goes my point that hockey will never become one of those, because it's not one of those sports that, other than regionally watched in those national broadcasts, it's not a popular sport. It's not. Now, does that mean that I think it's the greatest sport ever? I'm biased. I love it. I'm a one-trick pony. You guys know that. But I'm also realistic in the sense that it will never reach NFL, Major League Baseball, because of all the things that I've been saying for the last few minutes.
Two things in there that I wanted to touch on. The first one being, you mentioned Colorado. As you're right. And certainly in the States, hockey is a regional sport. But Denver should be, I don't want to pump us up too much, but I think it's a good model to follow when you look at the fan base of a hockey team. Yes, we have plenty of diehard Avs fans in the city, but particularly as this new generation of Avs has come to fruition, they win a Stanley Cup. When you look at the viewership numbers for the last 3 years of the Stanley Cup, Denver has been a top 5 city for the ratings when it comes to that. Obviously, the Avs are in one of those, but they weren't in this last year's one. They weren't in the 2023 one, and Denver still had millions of people watching these things. It goes to show that if you invest in a team in a location, you can grow the viewership base beyond just that hockey team, but to hockey in general. And certainly the NHL at times has done a good job of that. You've also seen them struggle in places like Arizona. So it goes a little bit of both ways. I think there's some credit that Bettmen deserves there. I also think they've failed in some areas to really grow fan bases effectively. And then the other thing you mentioned, and Chad has mentioned, infrastructure in a lot of North America just is not great when it comes to opportunities to play hockey. There aren't enough rinks in most states, I would say, to give the opportunity to all of the new people that are discovering hockey that Megan was talking about with the statistics earlier.
What makes it challenging from a Colorado lens specifically is how good the Avs have been in recent years.
Yep.
And so they routinely sell out crowds. And
Yep.
so those ticket prices aren't going down anytime soon because people are willing to attend these games at face value.
Yep.
And what makes it challenging alongside like the average ticket of an NFL game, which is higher, is that the NFL plays fewer games. And so it's viewed as more of this experience and a day out or an evening out because it's happening a lot less frequently. And so I think that's what makes it challenging to see the high ticket price for NHL games because they do play so often. It's hard for just a weeknight out with the family to justify that cost some of the time. And I'm a testament to that in some ways because my path to hockey was through college hockey, the Air Force Academy program. That was really accessible to me and to my family, and that's where I discovered it, fell in love with the sport, and at that time I could watch Avs games easily, so it was easy to connect with my team. Colorado's in the unique position of having this excellent team that people are crazy about, and it's difficult to watch them. And so live hockey is obviously one of the best viewing experiences, but what's challenging is having such a good team that you can't even watch from home if that's a more affordable option for you.
It's crazy to me, and nothing against all the people working at altitude and all this stuff. They don't.
I know that
they don't
they're
have
not
any say in
controlling
this
it.
decision.
Yeah.
But it is crazy to me that the NHL has not stepped in and done something to get the Avalanche back on local television in some regard. And I know they're on DirecTV, whatever. They could be doing a better job.
Because comparatively, another team that has routinely sold out audience is Vegas. And
Yep.
Vegas is introducing a streaming platform
Yep.
to make it even more accessible to their fan base. And I think that the success of the Golden Knights is due to that type of approach with their team, because they're a successful product similar to the Avs.
Yep.
They're selling out arenas. It's a little different in that it's it's an expansion team, so there's this new buzz around it that the Avs don't
Sure.
necessarily have. But I think that it's going to make the difference in what we see in the growth of Vegas's fan base over the next couple years comparatively. As the
100%
Avs
agree.
continue to be in this window, I still think they're going to have a huge fan base that
Oh, of
is hard to
course.
deny. I think hockey fans in general are just crazy about their sport, but I can't really see the ticket prices going down, and I don't love to see it because it does make the sport on the whole a little less accessible for other people. And you know what's challenging about this is a way that teams can help to make the sport more accessible is through things like equipment drives and being able to donate equipment to youth hockey.
Yep.
And the way that teams are able to do that is if they are generating profit. And that's meaning butts in seats and, renewing season ticket holders. And it just, you leave something on the table if fewer fans are able to watch that team. That contributes to the overall growth and ability for a team to give back to their community, I think, in a small capacity. I still think every NHL team, no matter their level of success, can give back to their community in some way. But those are the types of ways that make hockey more accessible as a sport. And I think that Colorado in particular is holding itself back a little by being inaccessible.
I agree. Full stop on that. It's what is already a rabid, large fan base currently in Colorado could be significantly bigger just by allowing people to watch your sport. That one feels like an absolute no-brainer to me. Again, if I were the NHL, I'd have stepped in years ago to get this sorted out, but it is what it is. On that note, make sure you are making smart money decisions. Like we said, hockey games can be expensive, so you want to make sure you're saving up your money if you want to go to some of those games. Get with Premier Members Credit Union. They're not a bank, which means they do things a little bit differently, like putting their members first with higher savings interest and lower loan rates. The organization has served Colorado for over 1 billion years. I don't know. I don't actually know the actual date, but they've been doing it for a long time at PMCU. Make sure you get with them if you haven't had the opportunity yet. They offer a ton of different options, including their new high-yield savings account. You can earn 5% APY on your first $2,000 with the reverse money tier market and plenty of other stuff. Whatever your goals are, they can help. PMCU is all about creating a better banking experience for their community. When you become a new member at PMCU, you'll get $200. You just have to open a checking account and sign up for e-statements, and that's it. They'll put $200 right in your account. Once you do that, this will be your best money move yet. Head to becomepremier.com to find out more. And to help you put money into that account, maybe you're looking for a new job, or maybe you're a job looking to hire someone. That's where Indeed comes into play. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. They have over 350 million global visitors to their website, according to their Indeed data. So make sure you're getting in on one of the biggest sites when it comes to monthly visitors. You can ditch all the busy work and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging. And 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality of matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So make sure you're getting over with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need Indeed. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I wanted to circle back to something Megan was talking a little bit earlier about the social media presence of hockey players and some of these documentaries. Look, certainly in the NBA and the NFL, boisterous characters are not in short supply. In the NHL, it feels like there is a little bit of a lack of that. I guess question number one, should we encourage NHL players and hockey players in general to have a little bit more individual personality? And if so, how do we do that? How do we change the culture of a sport that has always been so team first and so, so little individual personality is, I don't know if I want to say taught or is limited by media training or whatever you want to call it. How do we break that habit, I guess?
There's two things that come to mind. And the first thing is taking ownership as media of our storytelling. Because I think this is where people like me need to step it up on the whole and really emphasize the storytelling that we do with players. Because I think a lot of them have unique personal stories that we just need to ask them about and get them to open up a little bit more. And it can be a challenge sometimes because I think that a lot of players are wired to be just a bit private.
Yeah.
And so they're not necessarily forthcoming with that kind of information. But as media, especially with some of the access that we get compared to NFL, for example, I'm just hearing from some of our fellow beat writers on the Broncos side of things, some of the challenges that they face as media and how they cover the Broncos and limitations that exist. There are some barriers to how
Sure.
they are able to cover the team that don't exist for someone like me and how I'm able to cover the apps. And the access, from my perspective, isn't still what I'd like it to be, but I selfishly want it to be even greater. But it's actually, compared to other sports, pretty great access that we get to some of these players. And so I have to take a little ownership as media in connecting with players in that way. And then the other thing we've talked about is it's kind of coupled with the storytelling, but there are players with personality that I don't think we're doing enough with. I feel like there's not a huge abundance of rat-like players, but I think back to Tkachuk throwing Chris Kreider's mouth guard over the glass, and I feel like the game needs more of that than just Matt Tkachuk. And I'm not saying Brad Marchand should start licking people again, but I do think that kind of thing is the most realistic return to rivalries that we'll see, because I don't think we'll see a return to rivalries as we once knew. I didn't even get to personally experience what real rivalries looked like, because that would be my other suggestion, is to lean into marquee matchups between players and teams. But I just don't think that bitterness exists the way that it once did. But I do think players like Matthew Tkachuk, you use the word boisterous. I think that type of player we could key in more. And it still comes down to media, though, and how we tell these stories, because they're not going to just lead with that themselves.
Got to embrace the hate a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, increase the hate a little bit. Drive up, the rise of the rats. Let the rats be rats a little bit, within reason.
I love this.
Because the other thing is, be careful what you wish for. Should hockey players be more present on social media? I don't know. That feels like we might be regretting
Could be a trap, for sure,
little bit, regretting it a little bit. And I do think we've come a long way with media training, to your earlier point, that I don't want to abandon some of the things that have been really important learning lessons about how players should be carrying themselves on social media, because we've seen other athletes in other sports get into trouble for the way that they present themselves on social media. So I still want hockey players to be hockey players, but I think all of us can speak to hockey players being some of the funniest people we know. You just don't necessarily know it unless you get to talk to them on a personal level.
Yep, for sure.
Here's what I'll say. I think hockey, which is a team sport, should be treated differently than golf or tennis or individual sports. You know what I mean? And
you managed to pick the golf, two most boring sports when it comes to personalities. So
yeah, I know, but I mean, I'm just saying. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you heard Crow yesterday, right? You're a family, and when you're a family and you make it about the team, not about yourself. I mean, I bet you. I mean, I want to make sure people are clear. Like, no teams are coming down and saying to people, like, you can't do this, you can't do that. I think that guys are brought up.
It's a culture thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're brought up because you want to be part of the team. You don't want to be put yourself first before the team. Right away, if you're using a Twitter or something, it's about yourself. You know what I mean? Usually, you know what I mean? So it's like, and that's what kind of bothers people, like and teams that win, uh, they usually are tight and they're not bothered, or they don't have sideshows with those little things, and which ultimately I don't think really grows the team. Or again, people can argue me, I don't know, but I think it's really not going to benefit the team. It's really not going to make you a better team because you do stuff on Twitter. And again, I'm not against social media. You guys know that. I'm for it. But it is a big difference when you're part of a team sport. It's hard to make it about yourself. And the guys that usually do, it's not because they use social media, because it's because they're selfish people. I'm talking about, forget about social media. They're not team guys. They're not team players. They don't fit in the culture of the Colorado Avalanche. Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's some guys that don't fit about team first mentality. There's some guys that don't fit about, we say it all the time, you can be about winning or you can say you're about winning. There's two different things. And a lot of times you're if you're a selfish person and it's all about you and not about the team, you won't last in those teams. And that's why the winning teams, are all about, team and team first. And as far as putting yourself out there, those documentaries and, that we're seeing, like freaking Frack the Avalanche back then, we had that. We were on ESPN. You're talking about 20 years ago, following us in the locker rooms for a full year. This is nothing new, But on the flip side of that, until you've lived in the limelight and everything, there's some parts that you really don't want to share with. It's your personal life. Like, it's
of course.
You know what I mean? And it's hard. And that's, some people tend to have a hard time with that. Like, you don't want to. And I say it all the time, and you would never see that. Guys, the way they act in the locker room when the media's there, is totally different than the way guys act when they're on the team playing together and there are no media, because it's just private. And those are, it's just you're never going to see a barrier crossed there, because it's like, there's some things that need to remain private. And when you're in the limelight, that's just the way it is.
I would never ask a player to talk about private life things that they don't want to talk about. That side I totally understand of it. What I struggle with as a fan is when the players come across as plastic. When they have that media training and you can tell they're saying the things that they were told to say and there's no real character there, it's hard for me to get behind those guys and root for those guys, because I don't really know who they are. As a person, I don't know who they are. And I think that's where the NHL comes up a little bit short, where it feels like at times the culture and the media training it's almost overdone, that it takes so much out of it. These players, it feels like it's harder to connect with them. And I do want to rebut your thing a little bit about it being a team, because absolutely, you win as a team, you lose as a team. I understand that part of the culture. But think back to the Avs Cup run. Some of the biggest moments of that Cup run are almost entirely individual. The one that immediately jumps to almost everyone's mind, the Nazem Kadri hate trick. And I get, I'm not saying, obviously, all the stuff that was going on in St. Louis was terrible. I don't want more of that. That's bad.
No. Yeah.
But then you have that moment for Nazem Kadri where he comes out and he answers all the haters and he's like putting the ear up to the crowd. And all of that is sick. I want more of that stuff, obviously without all of the bad, but I want a little bit of fire, some rivalry, some reasons for a guy to run his mouth a little bit. And those create moments that people remember. And Kadri cemented himself as an Av for life now because of some of that. Everybody loves Kadri here. Everybody remembers those types of moments. And you need to get there without, terrible racism and all of the garbage that went on. But if you can generate a little bit of maybe, I don't know if I'd call it well-meaning hate, but certainly just more on the up and up, where guys are willing to get a little mad, to show off a little bit. It helps create memories for fans. I'll put it to you that way.
No, I'm not arguing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
There's truth in the plasticky players letting their walls down sometimes.
Yeah.
And it takes reevaluation as media and how you ask questions and what you're asking them, because we can return to the same cliches. And so we're just reinforcing the plasticky persona in the questions that we ask being incredibly cliched. And it's not true of every player. There have been players that I just can't really crack that just really put up those walls and keep them up. But there have been some that I have heard described as boring that I do not see in that way. And I think that's, again, where the ownership is on media to really be thoughtful in our question asking, to try and break through some of that as well. And I like the earlier point, too, about the excitement of some of that betterness that can exist in hockey in a fun and entertaining way without obviously leading into any tropes of bigotry.
Yeah, I'm not against that. It's not what I'm saying. Again, you want rivalries. I mean, we didn't have Twitter and, Colorado Avalanche, Detroit Red Wings. I mean, for me, I mean, there's nothing bigger than that in my lifetime. But so there are things, but I agree with you on the Kadri thing. Absolutely. I mean, what I'm trying to say is sometimes like people will see examples of hurting them more than helping them. And when it comes down to like social media and putting yourself out there, because it is a form of, it's short and it's not, I always tell my kids, because I am old and I am a different generation. I'm like, what are you doing? Grab the phone and call. And you make fun of me too. Like I call people. Like I know I'm stubborn that way, but it's just so much easier because I always feel that a text or a Snapchat or whatever, you don't really truly feel really the tone of what you're trying to say. And sometimes it can be misconstrued or whatever it is, right? And that's why I always say, man, oh man, like people can take it a certain way, what you just said, and it's not really what you're saying. You know what I mean? Where if you listen to it live or a live interview and you're talking for 2 minutes instead of putting 25, 30, 40 words, there's a big difference. And I think that over the years, guys are, and again, guys don't want to be sideshows, in our sport. I don't know why. I'm not saying it's a cultural thing. It's just like, guys want to go win as a team and play for the logo, and you see those cliches from Miracle and all that stuff, and that's what our sport is. And I'm not comparing to the other sports, but and a coach after a game on a again, I'll say it, and again, we're on the media. I'm on the media side now. It's cruel to put coaches 10 minutes after a game on a freaking stand with a microphone, and it's cruel. It's absolute cruelty. And every coach, and we should ask Crow that yesterday, but every coach will tell you that that's one of the toughest part of their jobs, because you're so high on emotions, you're so high on, and at the end of the day, I think Bednar does a good job. I think he's the best in the league, and I do think now with my stubbornness and my old self, like that, he says too much, you know what I mean? But I'm not going to argue it now with the media, because we're on the media side. But somewhere, somehow, it's tough to. And you'll never get an answer of what really said. Or a lot of times you get a question that's asked, hey, you just had a closed door meeting and what was said? Like, they'll never tell. There's nothing against the reporter or you'll never tell the public what was said because it's private. You know what I mean? And there's relationships in there. There's player relationships. There's player coach relationships. There's coach manager relationship. There's manager coach players relationships. You'll never hear like really exact. Why would you do that? Those are private conversations. You know what I mean? And a lot of times that's why, or I'll revert back on a different side note. There are like the in-game interviews that they do on the bench. Like, what? Like, what are you gonna do different? Oh, you know what? We're going to drop down to a freaking totally different, but I'm going to tell you on national TV, that what we're going to do here, where their video coach is listening. You know what I mean? So you're never going to hear what they're going to do. They're just going to stick to the stupid answers. And that's why I say those are stupid interviews, not by the people that are asking the questions. I just think that you can't win. It doesn't matter what question you ask. You're not going to win. You're going to get that answer, which is, yeah, we'll just, make sure that our F3 is a little more stable and our F1's more aggressive. Whatever. What's he going to tell you? And that's why I think that a lot of times, like, too much is too much, and you're trying different things that, for me, are useless in a broadcast, for example, to try to promote the game, where really you're not even promoting it. You're just making it sound a little dumb to me.
Let's be honest. I'm sure hardcore, diehard hockey fans really care about that type of stuff. People that watch our show love the breakdowns of when we're talking about the F3 or whatever. When you're trying to get new fans, like it or not, people love drama. They love the hot goss, all right? That's what people want. That's what people get interested in. I think back a couple of years ago, the whole thing with Draisaitl, where I forget who it was, called him pissy in that.
The reporter.
Yeah, the reporter called him pissy.
Mark,
and I'm not saying interviews should be doing that, and they're probably not a great thing to do. But you look at something like that, a little bit of a back and forth, and it blows up. Everybody's seen that clip. You know, it even goes outside of hockey circles to a certain extent. And you see things like that, and it's hard for me to see things like that and not go, okay, it feels obvious that we should be telling NHL players to show a little bit more personality, and if you have a little bit of a fiery back and forth, that's okay. You can have these arguments. The NHL shouldn't be out here fining people for doing things like that. And like it or not, some people are going to hate it, but that still gets you thinking about hockey. It still gets you invested in, oh, now I want that guy to lose from a viewership standpoint. That I think the NHL, modern NHL, I should say, struggles to encapsulate some of that hate at times.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. Like, we're not free from criticism as media.
Totally.
So that's not to say it should be a free-for-all with, like, no concern for professionalism.
Of course.
But, hey, I think a little bit of that bite from time to time makes the environment better, holds people more accountable.
Yeah.
And I also think on a player-to-player basis, I think back to how ragey Mikko can be sometimes. And I think back to, like, the incident where he was on the bench pointing his ring finger to chirp somebody. And then he immediately walked it back and apologized. Like, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. And I was like, I think that's okay.
Pop off, King. Yeah.
Mikko, there are so many things on ice that I don't think you should do.
That's not one of them.
That one is fine. You can do that.
Mikko, another great example last year where he shit talks back to Yzmo, and that maybe not quite as transcending hockey, but certainly circled the hockey world. Those are the great moments that the NHL should be trying to capture more of. I know Eric is just going to be like, well, yeah, you know, it's just an individual player. It's all about the team. Yeah, we can tell you're a hockey guy through and through.
I know, and I agree with you. I'm telling you, like, I've lived it. I've been there, and I'm not saying you haven't. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is.
No, I haven't.
But no, true that. But you know me, I never used that one. I'm saying, but when you are the guy in the limelight, and you are the guy you're seeing everywhere, it is freaking nerve-wracking. It is tough, and it is also, it's also tough to be a National Hockey League player every day. You know what I mean? It is tough to stay there. And now when you add those things, to some degree, let's use Naz for as an example. Perfect, yeah. Naz probably thrives on that. You know what I mean? Probably helped him. You know what I mean? Like, where they bring it on. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, but most people, they don't want that. Like you just said, Mikko, it's like, oh, God, where's this going? You know, like, I had a little moment, but now it's just bringing more attention to me, and I don't want the attention because I am a team guy. I'm going back to what you just said, you know, like, oh, yeah, well, not I, but usually most players, you know, I want it to be about the team. And, then, you know, you see those things die away a little bit, you know, or if you look at the Draisaitl thing, you know, again, it's years of frustration, and you know, maybe you get the go ahead from the PR guy, right? You know what I mean? Like, hey, listen, you can punch him in the mouth. You know what I mean? Like, why not? And again, not physically. I'm talking about the way he hits, you know, the way. And again, I've seen that. I mean, God, I mean, it's so. You can go back and forth all day on that. You know what I mean? Like everybody's going to have it comes down to personalities. And I think some guys, I told you guys, Peter Forsberg, are you kidding me? Like a guy that never wanted to be behind the camera, a guy that never wanted any praise, a guy that was, you know what I mean, would have done anything for his teammates. And he was the freaking again, you can argue Joe was better or whatever. They were both outstanding. You know what I mean? But never would it have been about him. Never would he have said, I mean, like I told you, he scores that third period, right? 5-6 points that he got there in that one of the best match we said like a month ago, whatever, third period in Florida. Again, it's a career freaking night. It's a career period. It's one of the best periods played by an NHL player in the last 100 years. What does he say when he comes in the room? He doesn't go like, yeah, I'm the guy. He's like, sorry, guys. I let you down the first 2 periods. We should have never been in that position. And that's what I'm trying. I know what you're saying. I agree. I know that's
not
what I'm
everyone's
trying to
that
say.
way. I get it. Yeah.
No, I know. But but a lot of the guys, that's how they are. That's whatever. And that's for me. It's a team sport. That's why it comes down to that. And it's not about you. It's about the team.
I hear you, and I get it. Some players are more reserved, and that's just the way it is. But an unfortunate reality of the world and playing sports in front of people is oftentimes the best athletes in whatever their particular sport might be. There's a little bit of onus on them to help grow their sport and help
for sure
get people enticed into it. The Olympics is going on right now. I look at someone like, go look at the U.S. sprinting teams. Guys, people like Noah Lyles, people like Sha'Carri Richardson. They have a lot of flair. Lyles walks out before his races and is doing all sorts of crazy celebrations and he pretended
busting out the Yu-Gi-Oh card.
Yeah, right. He pretending he's a Dragon Ball Z guy, and people love it. People eat that stuff up and are more interested in track and field because of that. And I know not everyone's going to be that way, but it just feels like hockey lacks that as a totality. There needs to be some more of those guys in hockey.
And the key to breaking through to this hockey culture thing is, instead of expecting individual players to talk about themselves, just ask them about their teammates. They love talking about the guys that they play for every day. So just ask them about each other and learn a little bit more about their relationships.
Hey, there you go. Megan leading the charge here. Everyone follow suit with the interviews, all right?
Nathan McKinnon is so much more agreeable if you ask him about somebody else.
Don't talk about we.
But occasionally he'll be like, why don't you just go ask Jonathan Drouin? So you have to really read the room.
Because Drouin won't give me a good answer, Mac. That's why.
I agree. And I just say, I don't know why in our sport, there's just less and less. I mean, there's less than other sports for whatever reason. And it's because I don't know why. And some people want the limelight on them on the ice, and they don't want it away from them. Hey, listen, who is the face of the Colorado Avalanche since its existence?
Ever?
Who's the face of
all time?
Even to this day. Yeah. I mean, Joe Sakic.
Joe?
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, in 10 years, it's going to be Cale Makar, but sure.
No, but I'm saying, like, as a player, now he's a manager. He's won the cup as a GM, as a player.
Sure.
What's his freaking nickname all those years? Quoteless Joe. I mean, that's just, you know what I mean? But he's still the face of the franchise. You know what I mean? And I know what you're saying. I'm not arguing. I wouldn't be one of those guys. I think I just shut my mouth. I go do my job, and I got plenty to worry about, and I don't try to bring on more. But now, do I like it? Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind that. Like you said, the cadre stuff. There's some guys that can take it, but there's some guys that can't take it, but they think they can. Those are the ones that usually don't last long. You know what I mean? And then there's guys that really go overboard and they make it about themselves and not the team. And that's where I don't want to name names. You know what I mean? But it's easy to see over the years in the NHL, like which ones I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, those ones will never win. They'll never win because they'll never be part of a winning environment. When it's too much, I'm talking about. You know what I mean? When it's all too much and it's all become the Nas thing, it wasn't too much. It wasn't about him. It just got created because of social media, like you said, not the good things, not the bad things. Of course, there was bad things. I'm not promoting that, like you both said. But some guys, they try to make, and it was like organically grown, that thing. It just happened, right? You know what I mean? It's some guys that try to make it happen. Those are the ones I'm talking about. Like when you try to make it happen, like you don't last. And you won't last in a team sport. That's just my opinion.
I want to agree with you, but I watch dudes like that win in the NFL and the NBA all the time. So,
But in our sport, it does. I don't know.
it doesn't until it does, buddy. It doesn't until it does.
That's right. You're right. Absolutely right. You're right.
We do have to wrap up today's show. We obviously only covered so much. There's a ton more we could talk about. Things like the NHL doing a better job of supporting the women's league, all sorts of other options for growth of the game that the NHL could be doing a better job of. So I think there's still a long way to go, but I will say it's moving in the right direction compared to a couple of years ago for the NHL. So
True.
Baby steps. We are out of here for today. We will be back tomorrow. We'll do a fun Friday show in the middle of August. So come join us. I think we'll have a little bit of, I don't want to call it trivia, but I have an idea for tomorrow's show. So tune in. We appreciate y'all, and we will talk to you then.
We all silly like the mayor.